Well, welcome here. My name is Murli Chirala. I, along with 20 others, are the formation of the FalconX B2B technology accelerator here in the Valley. Vivek and I are managing partners that are formalizing the entire platform and taking it forward. We were formed in 2018 as by 9 very passionate entrepreneurs, a platform for entrepreneurs, by entrepreneurs and for entrepreneurs. That journey has evolved into a community-driven, community-led, community-sourced platform. And now in that, we've also added a venture fund as well. So a very comprehensive platform that basically takes entrepreneurs, their startups, and then puts them into the center of the universe, and then makes sure that they have all the workings that are necessary in terms of the curated customers that they need, the access to capital that they need, and most importantly, the mentorship that allows them to transfer that journey successfully. So having said that, today, as Lochin said, it was an event that was planned in the context of true community tenet. And in that context, we have obviously worked with the Global IIT AI/ML Forum. I want to make sure that all of you take home with you a couple of messages. One is you are either an entrepreneur and startup that has a startup, or you're an executive prospective customer for these startups, or you're a venture capitalist that wants to put money into these or fund these startups. So all of you can find something to plug yourselves into the FalconX ecosystems, because what we've done is we've made sure that we've connected with global accelerators around the world and then sourced those terrific startups into our ecosystem here for the US markets. So that's FalconX as a story. I'm looking forward to an exciting evening this, after dinner. I'll make sure that the speakers will keep you awake with some of the anecdotes and various things that will keep you either worried or excited going into the rest of the evening. So with that, I want to hand it back to Lochin and then get us started for the evening.
Thank you, Murli and Vivek. Well, I would like to now invite on stage Jeremiah Owyang. For each speaker introduction, I have a small story. When I reached out to Jeremiah, could you please share your short bio? He said, I'll do an intro myself. Sure. But why we invited Jeremiah here today? Jeremiah, he is the orchestrator of Llama launch. That is a huge generative AI community in San Francisco. He hosts generative AI startups on monthly basis. And it started as soon as generative AI disruption started. And surprisingly, and the reason we invited him to be here is because he has 251K followers on Twitter. Marketing. So without wasting much time, please put your hands together for Jeremiah Owyang.
Thank you. That's so nice. An honor and delight to be here. Thank you guys, everybody, very much. Yep, I'm going to need that. All right, so how big is the generative AI movement? By the way, AI is not new at all. Machine learning has been around for decades. But now it's accessible for every single consumer, every single politician, every single CEO, every doctor, every student. All right, so for those that are watching the live stream and those that are in India watching, hello, over 90% of the hands are optimistic. All right, here's some stats. GPT had the fastest consumer adoption of any tool we've ever seen. 1 million users in just 5 days. There's a new term emerging in the Gen AI space, not just an exponential curve, but a double exponential curve. And it looks like this. It's flat, then all of a sudden, a spike. It's different than what we've seen in Web 2. It's different than what we've seen in the sharing economy, which looks like this, a long tail. So that's changed. Also, we have never, ever seen nearly every government in the world lean in on a tech trend all at once, all together. Have you ever seen government leaders move that fast within 6 months? Never. Next trend. Every single tech hyperscaler in Silicon Valley and Seattle has announced they're going to do an AI LLM. We've never seen that much movement so quickly. In fact, Sergey got out of retirement, and he's now back into Google to lead the AI. That is a big deal. If you're a billionaire and then you want to get into this, that is a huge deal. Here's another stat. There's 6,500 AI projects right now. There's a website called, you might remember this one, there'sanaIforthat.com, of course. I talked to the CEO, and he said he's seeing consistently 1,000 new projects being added per month. So that means by December, there's going to be how many? 12,000 AI projects by December. So if you're a VC like me, it's like, how do you pick these winners? It's going to be a very big challenge. What are some other stats that we see in this space? Let's talk about jobs. This is always one that concerns people. So if you look across multiple of the reports from McKinsey and Deloitte and out there, on average and aggregate, by 2040 to 2050, most of the forecasts indicate that around 30 to 40% of jobs will be lost. But the reports don't always tell you what the new jobs are because they don't know. We don't know what the new jobs are going to be yet. It's something we just can't even imagine. And it's not prompt engineer, by the way. All right, so that's the generative AI boom. It's kicking off. It's getting very big. We haven't seen anything like this in a long time. So a quick introduction. I do host a community event called Llama Lounge. It has nothing to do with Llama 2 from Meta. Llamas are the new unicorns. It's cute. And I saw people bring llamas to GenAI events. Yeah, real llamas. And I said, oh, that's the theme. And so I created Llama Lounge. So I host it several times per year. 10 different AI startups get to be on the demo floor. It's like a mini expo. And VCs come, press and media come, influencers, people fly in from around the world. They want to be featured. My next event is in August. It's already sold out. September, I haven't announced it because it'll sell out. But we're partnered with TechCrunch, Disrupt, an official event. So I'm excited about that. And then November, we'll be hosting it at Hana House in Palo Alto. So if you live down here, it'll be closer for you to attend. My day job, I run the AI fund at Blitzscaling Ventures. Blitzscaling is based upon the book by, you know the name? Reid Hoffman, who is kind of the guy in AI, and he co-wrote it with Chris Ye, my friend for 20 years. I served on his board, who was the founding partner. I lead the AI fund, seed and A round. Okay, so let's talk about this market. I'm going to give you a tour. So my background, I am a founder a couple times through, and before that I was an analyst at Forrester Research. So I literally define markets and talk about what they're going to be and do forecast trending and studies. So let's talk about the AI market, and specifically Gen AI. And you can use this as I went the wrong way. Use this as a roadmap. I worked with my partners at Blitzscaling, and I also got feedback from Stanford CS and Amazon Web Services, and I think there's people here in the room from AWS, in order to make sure that I got this right for a business audience. Obviously, if you are a programmer or developer, you might structure it differently, but this gives you a business landscape. Use this as a roadmap. Use this as your way to plot where to invest, where to build your company, where not to. I'm going to give you some insights along the way. By the way, you're probably going to ask me, can I get these slides? They're my pinned tweet. So if you go to Twitter, you'll see it. It's at the very top. You can access this diagram. All right, let's go through it. At the bottom layer is the most important layer. This is the gold. There's a couple types of data here. We've got public data, proprietary data. So let's talk about those two. GPT-4, Inflection, Anthropic, and the open source models in Hugging Face are trained off public data, mostly text-based data. But it's actually not most of the data. Most of the data is where? Behind the firewall. And the estimate is 80% of the world's data. We'll never actually know because the militaries around the world will never tell us. And the spy agencies will never know. Let's just say 80%. So there's a tremendous amount of information that has not been tapped. So that's an opportunity for entrepreneurs to build Gen AI for those groups, whether that be a corporation, a private cloud, or a military, or a government, or an education system. So there's a tremendous amount of untapped data. All right, let's do a pop quiz. If you took all of the training data from GPT-4, which is text-based information, and you compress that text-based information, how big do you think the file size is? And just to clarify, we're talking about all of the written knowledge of humankind from multiple languages from the beginning of time that was published on the web. How large is that data set when compressed? Petabytes. 1.2 petabytes? What else? 1 exabyte. Jeez. I used to work at Hitachi Data Systems, so I'm familiar with some of these trends. You're giving a lot of credit to humankind. The answer is 1 terabyte. It fits on your phone. Human knowledge fits on your phone. It's actually a small amount. By the way, just to clarify, that does not include video-based content. That's only text-based content. Okay. So the next type of data is synthetic data. That is what generative AI is creating. And this is an important thing to look for. So we're looking for startups that are building new products with synthetic data. Now, let's go back to 1990s. There was a startup in Los Gatos called Netflix. And they were working on a new product to bring DVDs to homes. At that time, we could not imagine what the final product would be, live streaming. You couldn't really imagine that. But I think there's a direct parallel for this new market where synthetic data is going to create a new product type that we just can't imagine yet. And so we're looking for that. Reid Hoffman's looking for that. I'm looking for that. We're not sure exactly what it is. We have some theories. All right, and next we're going to see a new type of data. I'm seeing little inklings of this emerge called proof of fact. It's probably a protocol. It could be on-chain. That is a series of objective facts that we can all agree upon in order to prove and make sure that there's less hallucinations. By the way, if you want to try an amazing app, check out Perplexity. It is a search engine that rivals Google. It's better than Google. I'm sorry, does anybody here work at Google? Oh, I'm sorry. Google search is horrible. Google search gives you 10 results and there's ads, and you don't know which result is great. And then when you click on the page, it goes to a page filled with what? Ads. Then you get to the content you want, it's at the bottom. By the way, you picked up stalker ads that follow you around for a month trying to sell you erectile dysfunction pills. That's the Google search experience. Now you try Perplexity. It gives you all the answers right in the page. It doesn't send you to other websites. And it includes links to the sources, and it suggests other content, and there's no ads. That's the future. In fact, Bill Gates said in CNBC that these personal assistants are going to change how we do search, and they're going to change commerce, which I'll talk about in just a second. There are some radical transformations coming. That's why Google says red alert. That's why Sergey has gone back to Google. This is a serious issue for Google and Amazon. I'll explain that in a sec. Okay, so we talked about the data layer. Next is the AI infrastructure layer. All right, so there's a number of things here. The hot category is machine learning ops, ML ops. There's numerous startups in San Francisco that are working on this to try to make things more efficient. But this also includes chips. My friend Martin and Bill talked, raise your hands guys. So they are experts in data storage, managed hosting, co-locations. I learn from them all the time. Go talk to them if you have questions. And we were at an event last week, and I could see some of the racks at Open Colo, which is in Santa Clara. By the way, I used to work at Exodus. The Exodus founders are here in the room, right here. Thank you. I was an intern. I was just a lowly intern, so thank you for paving my career. And we can see already that these chips, the H100s could be up to $20,000, A100s as well from NVIDIA. It's just very expensive. A full rack with full GPUs and storage and switch, plus power and cooling, not even included, is $1.25 million for a full rack. Wow, prices have changed, huh? So that's part of this issue here. And when I talk to players in the space, the wait time for chips is, depending on the chip, could be 30 weeks to 70 weeks. AI startups are going to birth and die by that time. So if you have the chips, you have a competitive advantage in the world. If you don't, you are dependent upon Azure, AWS, and GCP. So there's a battle now over the chips. By the way, there's warships circling Taiwan constantly. You understand what's going to happen, right? This is very serious. Because whoever builds the AGI rules the world. This is very serious. Okay. So one of the startups we invested in is called Inflection AI. Reid Hoffman, Mustafa Suleiman are the founding team. They had an investment from NVIDIA, which included 22,000 H100 chips from NVIDIA. So that is what is considered a large set. So that's the second largest supercomputer in the world. And it's an LLM. So you can try that product later. It's called Hey Pi, P-I. It's a very lifelike experience when you try it. The investors also included Microsoft, NVIDIA, Bill Gates, and Eric Schmidt. So it is the team to watch. All right, now let's talk about AI models. So I just mentioned Inflection fits there, but also Anthropic. I was at the hackathon on Sunday, the very first hackathon for Claude 2, and saw how they're rolling that out. It can ingest a significant amount more data and spit out and generate more data than GPT-4. There's also, of course, OpenAI, and they have numerous foundational models and multimodal. And then there's open source versions. The two most common are Llama 2, Llama 1 as well, from Facebook. Who knew they'd be the open source heroes, right? And then also there is Falcon. So this is the space to watch. Oh, sorry, Stable Diffusion would also fit into that category. So those are there's proprietary foundational models and open source. Now, let's talk about this. If you're a corporation, do you want to give your information over to the big three hyperscalers again? Your data is your gold. Do you want to hand it over to the big tech companies so they can train on it and build an AI just to disrupt you and you have to pay fees? No, you don't. So a trend we're seeing is big corporations are getting open source versions, or they're working with solution providers like Cohere, and they are training their own models with their own proprietary data. The first industries are pretty obvious. It's healthcare, pharma, and financial services and government, where there's regulated and proprietary information and PII. So that's where we're seeing this battle. Now, of course, there's a battle for the consumer side. So GPT-4 is going to be integrated as Copilot through 365. GPT-4 and GPT 3.5, they're almost at 1 billion users. And it's not even at the annual moment. That's incredible. We've never seen growth like that ever. And once it integrates into Microsoft Suite, it's going to be everywhere. Obviously, Google knows that as well, and they're trying to roll out their products as quickly as possible. Amazon, we're waiting for their product, which is dubbed Titan, and Google will also release another one called Gemini. So there's going to be a battle for LLMs at this layer right here. Now, the challenge for this layer is that it's extremely expensive. The cost to train GPT-4 is $500 million, allegedly. It's extremely expensive. So unless you're a billionaire, it is very challenging to be a leader in this category. So that's why we see most of the growth opportunities in the next category. Let's go. In the AI apps. This is where there's over 6,000 different AI projects. So this is the category where you have an AI app for every single type of vertical, industry, and department. And there's no shortage of them. You go up to San Francisco and you'll meet them. The last category is autonomous agents. So have you tried Agent GPT? Who's tried that? Okay, a few hands, a dozen hands. Tonight, that's another one to try out. So I talked about Perplexity, Hey Pi, and Agent GPT. Those are autonomous agents. And that is the first steps towards AGI, which is equivalent to human intelligence. So an autonomous agent like Agent GPT, you put in a request, book me a trip to Bangalore. And then it will say, well, you need this type of passport. Here are the different flights. I'll start to book them. Here's some hotels that you need. Here's what you need to pack. And it'll start to do all those things and assign new AIs to go do those things for you. It operates on its own with little human intervention. So that is the hot category of emerging tech, autonomous agents. So bringing it all together, this is the roadmap. This is the current market, the AI tech stack. I received feedback from the experts in the space. I will be updating it. It's already version 1.1. And I hope this helps you on your journey, this very exciting journey for generative AI. Thank you. I'm Jeremiah.
I'd like to invite all the panelists on the stage, respected Dr. Raj Yavatkar, Ashish Tushar, and Ashish Bansal, and I'll be introducing them. I'll take the chance to introduce them as they take the seat, and hopefully we can get a couple of mics right on the stage for the. So, let me take this opportunity to introduce the respected panelists. All of you can check their LinkedIn profiles, but I always try to give a personal touch to these introductions. Starting with Dr. Raj Yavatkar, a name does not need, introduction in Silicon Valley. Chief Technology Officer of Juniper Networks. He was previously a fellow at VMware and Intel, an undergrad from IIT BHU 1980 Electronics, and a PhD from Purdue. His advisor was somebody who is one of the most known names in networking, Douglas Comer, whose books almost everybody who has worked in networking has read. But the reason I feel so humbled and honored to be moderating a panel where Dr. Raj Yavatkar himself is a panelist is, on 9th June 2000, when I worked for Intel in Portland, Oregon, Raj was a senior principal engineer. I was an entry-level software engineer. And I wanted to get introduced to him. I had sent him an email, and I wanted to meet with him. So I went to his cubicle. I couldn't get it on his calendar. His EA refused, said, sorry, Tushar, he doesn't really have time. So I just landed up at his office and asked his executive assistant, can I just say hi to him? He said that he's completely booked. I said, don't worry, I'll stand outside his cubicle. As soon as his meeting ends, I'll just pop in and say him hello. So I waited for almost 1.5 hours till one of his meetings got over. I got in, I introduced myself, and he recognized me. And then 2 months later, when I was looking for a job in Intel, he did help me there. I feel that from standing for 1.5 hours outside his cubicle to say hi to him, today we'll be doing a panel for 1.5 hours. And I think, Raj, with your blessings, I would consider that to be an achievement for myself. So that's my introduction to Dr. Raj Yavatkar. He's always been there to help me. Ashish Tushar, amazingly intellectual person, a very accomplished individual whose humility is par excellence. IIT Delhi 96 Computer Science, MS from Wisconsin at Madison. He worked at Oracle for 6 years and worked for Facebook for almost 4 years before he launched his own startup, Qubole, which worked in the similar area as Databricks, ran the company for 8 to 9 years, successfully grew it, raised almost more than $100 million, and then sold his company, a very successful entrepreneur, who then later on went to Amazon Web Services to work as a GM. One of his products included Amazon SageMaker. When Jeremiah was talking about foundational models and then, the AI infrastructure layer below it, that's what exactly his team was building. He recently left and is working on a stealth mode startup, about which, of course, we can't talk. But I'm pretty sure it will be something which will be very successful and really good. Ashish Bansal. He is one person whom I really don't want to introduce because I've known him for 25 years. We lived in the same hostel and we used to hang out together in IIT. We discussed everything in the world other than academics, certainly not AI. He came to my room once in April 1997 when my dad was visiting for a very different reason, but just as soon as he saw my dad, he said, do you have the book of Malvino Leach in electronics? So he's very good at managing situations in tough circumstances. 7 years back, we started the Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning Forum together. Ashish is a well-versed person whose ability to explain very complex concepts in layman terms is amazing. A very successful individual who is at Google right now, working in one of the core ML teams, previously worked at Amazon Twitch. We worked together at Twitter. He was in recommendation systems and previously was on Wall Street working in Capital One. Started his career at Sapient. And we also want to regretfully inform that, maybe get that slide back. Pardon? Oh, okay. So regretfully inform that we had another very accomplished panelist, Ms. Meenu Agarwal, who was supposed to join us, Group Senior Vice President at Workday, who was running a team of 1,200 people, which includes customer experience and customer success for whole of Workday. Unfortunately, he had a family emergency, had to fly into India. So I would have loved to be here and certainly will be in one of our events going forward. amazingly articulate speaker whom you would miss. Me and Raj would try our best to cover the topics. I certainly do not have the stature to step into her shoes, but we'll try our best. With that, want to thank everybody, and I also want to apologize. I know dozens of you reached out to me within last 1 week, as Lochan said, to get tickets for your friends, family. We could not. So I was joking today that next time we should have an event at a place which has got 500 people in attendance. And as Lochan said, make sure you book your ticket a month before. Otherwise, it's tough to get into these events. So I'll now move to the stage. Hopefully, we have mics for all our speakers. And after the panel is over, remember, this panel is very different from what you typically see at conferences, whether it's alumni conferences or TiCon. This is like a mini conference. We'll be covering a breadth of topics, almost for an hour or so. And then we'll open it for Q&A, which can easily go for half an hour or 45 minutes. We want to answer as many questions as possible. This is not what I call a lip service to the audience. And this is going to be a very engaging conversation where we'll be learning from you as much as we learn. Your guys are going to learn from us. So with that, let me start the conversation. We have 4 or 5 broad areas which we are going to cover today. We are going to request each of the speakers to start by covering each of the areas where they have an expertise and interest. Once they have expressed their thoughts, we'll have other panelists joining in to express their opinion about that particular area as a secondary expert. And then we'll move on through all the panelists. We are basically going to cover 4 or 5 broad areas. Infrastructure and applications of generative AI, that will be covered by Dr. Raj Yavatkar. He will also be helping us with application of GenAI for customer experience and success. He's building such products right now at Juniper as a CTO of the company. We'll be covering large language models, prompt engineering, abstractive summarization, and LLMOps. That will be covered by our respected Ashish. We'll talk about research and advancements in large language models from Ashish Bansal. And then we'll talk about challenges with industry adoption. I want to let you guys know that just to come and prepare for this panel, as you can imagine, we have spent almost 6 to 7 hours just to prepare for this particular event. An hour-long conversation with the panelists, and we have already held 2 virtual coffee chat for Artificial Intelligence and Machine Learning Forum virtually with almost 50 people over last 3 or 4 weekends, where some of these topics were discussed to refine our thought process. So what we are going to discuss today is not something you can easily see on YouTube. It's something which is churned over almost a month with contribution not just from panelists, from at least few dozen experts in the IIT community. So with that, Raj, we would like to start with you, and we would like to request you to share with us, the area of networking, compute, and storage, right? We have vertical specific LLMs. We are talking about infrastructure applications of LLMs, its impact on supply chain. And then we are also looking at, how LLMs are kind of, being leveraged when it comes to day 0, day 1, day 2. Your feedback on self-healing networks, closed loop automation. If you can start us with that, leaving aside customer experience for a second. We'll come to that in a minute. We'd like to start because that's an area which not many people are familiar with. It's a huge area for application, a huge opportunity. So with that, Raj, over to you.
No, I was just saying that I want to start by thanking Jeremiah, who did an amazing job in educating us about the whole application stack. I learned a few things. I was trying to take mental notes as fast as I could. So the area, and I'm not going to claim that I know everything. I think Jeremiah just showed a lot of things happening continuously. This area is constantly evolving. But let me take the compute, storage, or networking domains as examples to see what can be done and what is possible, right? So I think the large language models in general are available, but the challenge is to take them and make them more domain specific so that they start generating content for that domain without causing hallucinations and so on. So one of the things is that I think you've seen Bloomberg create the LLM model just for financial services. Similar to that, I see networking as a domain. How do we take all the knowledge related to networking semantics, right? It doesn't matter which products, which vendor is selling. Networking as a discipline has been around for now about 50, 60 years and has a lot of expertise related to how networks are constructed, operated, managed, and so on. So one of the things we are looking at is that can we take the existing large language models, either open source or something available through enterprise license, fine tune it for networking domain itself. The purpose of that is that if you look at networking, how it comes about, especially outside of the hyperscalers, you have every enterprise has some kind of network engineers, and they use command level instructions, CLI, and fortunately for a long time, as a way to interface to the networking systems, to bring up the systems on day zero, configure them, and so on. And that's such in dark ages compared to what ChatGPT shows that can be done. So one of the purposes is to do that. Can I simply have large language models, a ChatGPT-like interface, to simply say what I want to do on day zero and just accomplishes the task by creating a series of steps that normally you would give as form of commands. From day zero, once you have the network operational, you have to worry about day one and day two. Day one is more about making things operational, and day two is on continuous operations. And there again, the traditional mechanisms are very, even though we talk about automation, still the human being is involved, and it's pretty labor intensive in the sense that anytime something goes wrong, you have lots of dashboards, you have lots of telemetry data, and somebody has to interpret that to be able to see, first of all, what I call to achieve mean time to innocence, determine whether the network is at fault or not. Because you'll notice that anytime something goes wrong in the enterprise, people blame the network. Network is either slow, network is not working. Well, many times the problems could be elsewhere, like computer storage. So first thing is to determine that. And that can be done very easily using generative AI-based trained models, which if they're trained on all the cases and logs you have seen in the past, they can start spitting out possible diagnostics, possible root causes. Next thing is to, once you have the root cause identified, how do you diagnose it, and can you even self-heal it or self-correct it? So one of the things that has been done already for Wi-Fi networks is that you can self-resolve problems if you can identify them while they're happening and find solutions to them. That has been done in some domains, but it can be done in a more general purpose domains. Then we could solve the problem of this whole purpose of network operations that every enterprise goes through, right? You could argue that hyperscalers have built large-scale networks by building such automation at scale, but that is not available to everyone. So LLMs and generative AI creates an opportunity to take that to every enterprise or every small, medium business, which depends on connectivity to the internet.
Makes sense. So we'd like to request Ashish Tusu and Ashish Bansal to share their thoughts on this topic based upon the perspective and their experience, which is probably from a different angle than our infrastructure providers. So we'd love to hear your thoughts if we move to the next topic.
Thank you, Dr. Yavatkar. I think I want to take a point that you had made about domain-specific models and maybe abstract it out in context of the framework that Jeremiah had presented. So if people kind of remember that framework, at the top there were the two boxes about AI apps and agents, and below that there was foundation models. And Jeremiah, if I may be so bold to introduce a layer in between those two, which is, I think, domain adaptation and task adaptation. So foundation models, I don't think we need a lot of foundation models. There's probably a few foundation models. And as Jeremiah pointed out, it's pretty expensive, both in terms of the data that you need to train and the compute you need to train. So it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea to build foundation models. But let's say that the examples that Dr. Yavatkar is taking around, let's say, network healing. So let's say that I am a Juniper or a Cisco. I have a certain set of product lines and I want to manage my network, and I want to have very specific information about my products and how we can improve or fix the products or identify issues. But I think the products are in the domain of networking, right? Similarly, I can say that there is a domain of, let's say, aerospace or aerodynamics, where all of the airline companies are in the same domain. I can say that there is maybe a domain of infectious diseases, whereas there might be specific drugs or interventions, or cardiovascular disease is a domain, or just disease might be a domain in itself. And these domain-specific models are generally, what we are seeing is that you can take a very large foundation model and you do something called as domain adaptation. Domain adaptation can help you distill the model. ultimately, we should not forget the economics of the thing as well, which is that you have to serve this model, and your economics will be determined eventually by cost per query, right? No matter what model you build, if it takes you $1 per query to service, and you're not appropriating value more than $1 per query, you're building a loss-making business. So your business will not fly. It doesn't matter how good your technology is. It's just too expensive for it to be useful. So reducing the size of models by domain adaptation, and by task adaptation, what I mean is that chat is a task, right? If once I train a domain model in networking, I can have somebody chat with it. I can maybe build an API interface to it, which is better suited for automation of interfaces. So there can be many different interaction models that I can train that domain model onto. And once I have that, then I think it's ready for enterprises to use their proprietary data for specific purposes. So I've not really seen, and maybe this is an idea that somebody wants to take on in terms of startups, is to think about how can I build domain models. It does require a certain amount of domain expertise. Think of the
also some amount of proprietary data, right? Just not all the information. I mean, product information is always available publicly, but the proprietary aspects of about what the intricacies are, internal details are, what works, what doesn't work, those are not available generally. So I think the agent GPT that was mentioned, right? If one could think of agent GPT, but for a domain adaptation.
Absolutely. And the trick here is to adapt to the domain and lose some information. And I'm going to make a human analogy. All of us have, in this room, I think, have at least passed high school. And that would mean, I think that's a requirement
assumption for appearing in JEE exams. And 90%, 75% audience here are IITians, so they probably would have passed high school.
And I don't want to discriminate if you didn't pass high school. You're here, you've made it in life, so that's great. But the point I'm trying to make is you've read through many subjects which contribute to your overall knowledge, but you never face the problem of disambiguation. What I mean by that is I work on a product that Google has called TPUs. It's similar to GPUs. We build our own stuff. So if you go to one of these LLMs and just ask a question, what is a TPU, right? Now TPU, it's a very specific question, and I'm giving you a test case. You'll see very widely differing answers on this. And the reason for that is you are talking to an agent that's trained on the entire universe of information. Who knows? I don't know. There will be 30,000 TPU acronym. TPU is just an acronym, right? Who has somebody might have a different acronym. Think of the Wikipedia disambiguation page. Of every now and then, you search for a term, you get to a page which says, did you mean this, or this? And this is the problem with foundation models. When you do domain adaptation, you can let go of many of the things. It's like if you did AP Euro or AP US history in your high school, you don't probably need that when you are working with computer science, even though you studied it. So you can actually reduce your model and specialize in certain areas. So that's one area that I would just like to highlight is an interesting developing area where I can balance the cost of running the model with the expertise the models have.
So one quick question to clarify this before we come to Ashish is, so when we talk about domain-specific models, you're talking about vertical models, so how do you see that evolving? Like for example, financial services. Do you expect some startup to come up and build a financial services specific LLM, which will be used by, let's say, JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs? Or do you think each of them will build their own separate models? So would it be like a generic financial services specific LLM, then fine-tuned by these big companies? Or each of these big companies will build these models from scratch, make their own vertical specific? How do you see that industry evolving?
What's going to happen is there is always proliferation followed by consolidation. We are seeing this for, let's say, streaming services. Everybody thinks that they can run a streaming service. They've launched it, and now we are like, oh, maybe I should sell Disney to Apple. This is a public news article. I'm not giving any secrets away. So what's going to happen is everybody's going to try to build one. The trick here is that building is not hard. Maintaining and managing is really hard. So at some point in time, people are going to question what is the ROI in those companies from managing. It's a lot of work. to manage a lot of people. And my sense is that large financial corporations, their incentives and expertise is more aligned to financial markets or whatever the domain that they work in. And that's why they buy technology solutions from other companies that help them, whether it's a trading system, whether a back office settling system. There's so many systems that are used even in financial services that are built by other people but used by the JP Morgans. I do believe that there will be a class of products and companies who work. One of my friends, Shirish, is here. He works on AML solutions. It's not like JP Morgan can't build their AML solution, but there are certain verticals where what they are building might be very useful. So I think the same thing will emerge over time, where we'll have some very specific companies that are doing, why not Wall Street Journal, for example? Why can't Wall Street Journal, who arguably has a very large corpus of financial information, build a domain model for financial services?
Yeah, I think just to add there, the differentiator is not the model architecture, it's the amount of money that you have and the data that you have. That allows you to build the model. So today nobody's building, everything is transformer based. Yeah, maybe a new architecture will come out, people will move to that, but if you look at what all these companies are doing, essentially they're throwing money at the problem and they're essentially throwing data at the problem, and that's how they're essentially, so whoever has the data corpus. Yeah, is that better? Okay.
Much better.
Yeah, I'm used to the mic being a little away.
Yeah.
But whoever has a data corpus and has a capital can build that type of foundation model. Now, it's a very capital intensive and a data intensive task, and therefore very few companies can do it. But for domain adaptation or for adapting for certain applications, apart from things that Ashish talked about fine tuning and all that stuff, that is still heavyweight stuff. There are other techniques also which are coming up, such as augmenting the models with knowledge and making them answer through context, which is much more on which people might have heard about prompt engineering and stuff like that, which is making it much more broad-based. So,
sorry, go ahead.
So I think there's going to be a balance of capital and data, getting models in certain areas, and then there's going to be a lot of some of these techniques being applied to build, adapt the models not just for that domain but for that application as well. And I think that's how it's going to sort of evolve, if I was to take
that. So basically ties to the bottom layer what Jeremiah had presented on data.
One question, one just is for both Ashish, is that the training costs a lot right now. But I think to some extent I believe that that's too early to say that all training will always cost so much. Because I've seen one of the startups called thirdai.com, Third.ai, I think, or something like that, where they have shown that for some domains, the training cost can be reduced, because when you talk about billions of parameters, if it's a matrix multiplication with weights of parameters, right? A lot of the parameters are zero weights. So if you could do sparse matrix multiplication, you could reduce the cost of training. So there's still a lot of new developments to happen.
There's a lot of new development which is happening on the training side. There's a lot of new development which is happening on the prompt engineering side. Training though still needs, you need to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Prompt seems a little bit more like application development, so to speak. You still need to know a few things as to what to do. So it's much more democratized as compared to training. But you're right, I think there'll be a whole set of innovation which is driving the training costs down, maybe even tools which are being built so that the training specialization or knowledge which is needed around what is this data and how it's labeled, and or maybe unsupervised way of doing things, that's all going to come. But I think the balance will be, it's not going to be either or. I just feel it's just not going to be either or. There's just too much value in how you do the prompts, and there's also a lot of value in.
So, Tushar, I'm not going to let you talk, right?
Please go ahead.
You know that, right?
That has been for 20, 30 years.
So I just want to answer slightly differently. The sparsity point that you make, it's a little bit of a technical point for the geeks in the room. Sparsity is not pre-known. So you can do sparsity after training is complete. So while you're doing serving, you know what weights are zero. But while you are training, you don't know if the weight will continue to be zero. So during training, it's really, really hard to exploit sparsity. Now, there are some techniques and new things will be people are working on, and my team is also working on. Obviously, cost. Everybody wants to reduce cost.
Yeah.
However, inference cost you can drive down using some of the things there, but not generally in training. And then fine tuning and the prompt engineering piece. One thing that I just want to highlight: foundation models don't understand prompts. You need to do instruction tuning for a foundation model to understand prompts. You can also instruction tune a fine-tuning model, instruction tune a foundation model to respond in, let's say, XML. So think of prompts as a mechanism to communicate with a model. Model doesn't have a voice, or maybe you're teaching the model to either speak or write. In case if it's writing, it's generating XML for you, which you can plug into an API. And if it's speaking, you're training it to do prompts. I think what a lot of people are doing in prompt engineering is reverse engineering the data set used for instruction tuning. And I've done a few tests of my own. I have a bunch of collabs that I run periodically just to baseline my own expectation from each of these models. The same prompt engineering techniques don't work on all of these models. So if you read all of these, and Twitter is just full of all these people who are like, if you're not using AI, you're falling behind. Let me teach you how to do these 30 prompts. And I would urge you to take them on their offer and take the exact same prompt and run it on Bard, which is publicly free, run it on ChatGPT, which is also free. And I believe Cohere's model, you have to do a sign up, but it's also free. And try the exact same prompt and you'll get 3 different results. So